So, in this episode, we're going to be discussing where AI is heading. And ultimately, we want to provide people with a practical and maybe slightly provocative view of where board governance is headed and what boards need to start doing now before that window closes. So, Tim, getting your crystal ball, what does the governance stuff look like in 3 years' time?
I think there's going to be AI directors on every board. There's going to be either a synthetic or a real voting member of the board that is an AI agent that's going to opine on the decisions that the board's actually making, right? So
Mhm.
the technology exists now. It's the adoption that I think is just we want some brave boards to start adopting effectively AI directors sort of on the board. The other issue is the application of AI in the boardroom in real time. Reflecting on decisions, making sure nothing is actually missed, effectively acting as an AI COSEC, but actually as the AI sort of conscience of the board to make sure that they're not missing things, that the context is there, they haven't engaged in cognitive bias sort of as well. And I think boards that aren't leaning into AI in terms of that context will be at a competitive disadvantage to those boards that embrace it.
And you're seeing this directly, Tim. I think that's it. This isn't fairy tale stuff. This is actually happening. So it's if we kind of think about that sequence, and because I think it is becoming clear, exactly as you said, that you've got these agentic services potentially to help the board think more strategically before and during that meeting. You've got things like, which are passions for us, so AI assisted pack creation, and that helps management not drown in creating these things, but also generate better quality to be analysed in the first place. And then a layer, whether it be an AI layer of analysis or agents again, that analyze, host, and track across board cycles so that the board's institutional memory doesn't have to reset every quarter. And I think that's kind of the key things. It's really that capability, Tim, that we've been discussing and exploring end to end of what would actually support the boardroom.
I agree 100%. It's coming, and those boards that get on the bandwagon first will actually profit from it.
Who do you think, speaking of that and getting on the bandwagon, owns AI governance in the boardroom? Is it the chair? Is it the company, the exec, the co-sec, the CEO? Who should be taking ownership of this?
It genuinely does start with the board. And if you think about what responsibilities the board has now in terms of governance, or it has the same responsibilities for AI governance, and management has
Mm.
the same responsibilities for governance, but now they have the same responsibilities for AI governance. The problem is it's less so about the responsibility, it's about the ability to understand what they're governing, because the knowledge of AI is actually pretty thin. Um, Across boards, particularly. So, how do they know what they don't? How can they govern what they don't understand? Right. So that's a big concern for me.
It is, and I 100% agree with you. It has to be owned at the board, and you see it kind of belted around between different people. The poor COSEC again. Why am I dealing with this? But if the board, exactly as you said, if the board doesn't have a view on how AI is being used to manage their risk, including the risk of not using it, then they're not governing appropriately. They're just
Correct.
observing. And that's a liability question. It's not a technology question. That's probably one of these key, if anybody takes anything away from this thing, I think it's
Yeah.
that, Tim, that they've really, the board have to take ownership of this now.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? I reckon I could see in 5 years' time there's going to be a court case involving a board that has been using AI that's got something wrong, and a board that hasn't been using AI that ought to be using AI because they're actually at a competitive disadvantage and shareholders are upset.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We see the things where it goes wrong, right? Nobody's
Yeah.
talking about, and what is the risk of getting this wrong, you reckon?
You've got regulatory, like from a regulatory perspective, you've got risks, right? Regulatory, the mountain of obligations is insurmountable almost. So it actually helps you manage the regulatory risk. So if you're not managing the regulatory risk, that's a massive downside. But the commercial, I think, opportunity is even bigger because it allows you to process the things that matter to the business and map the conversations to the strategy much more effectively. So I think it's the opportunity lost that's actually the biggest, that should be driving boards adoption of AI.
If they think about what they can do with AI, right, it's they can detect patterns across reporting cycles. They can track unresolved actions. They can watch deteriorating metrics that, human is, it's very hard to watch all of this as a human. Inconsistencies across hundreds of pages. AI can do that faster than what any human can, is the reality. And so that changes the governance equation, because I think the question increasingly becomes, if the signal was detectable, why wasn't it surfaced? Was it that it was an operational issue, or is it a governance failure because they didn't have AI in place? That will be the kind of lens I think people will come back with.
Yeah, and that pattern recognition is underrated. And you often see boards sometimes get into trouble because of a boiling frog syndrome, right? There's small little patterns of things happening over time, and you get the temperature rises really slowly, and it's hard for the board to see it. But in retrospect, they can actually see it. And that's one of the great applications of AI, is it can detect those patterns over time and bring it forward rather than before the event, rather than after the event.
I love that, because the role of the director is still going to be about judgment. But increasingly, the expectation will be that organisations have systems capable of servicing material signals before they become material failures. And that's, as directors, what we should be looking for.
100%. 100%. And most of the big failures that have happened in governance land are really small, lots of small things, and there's lots of little signals, but it's not until something breaks that the directors really are aware of it.
So people watching this would say, "Great, Tim, you're in Kea like these tech people. You're in AI day in day out. Great. What do? We haven't started." What would you tell a board that hasn't started down this path yet?
Yeah, I think you've got to get onto it straight away, right? You've really got to start exploring tools like Vizory. What's actually out there, and what are the benefits that we can actually get from it. But they've got to start leaning into it and learning about the capabilities. There is a slow turnover of directors usually, and things happen at a fairly glacial sort of pace. Those directors that don't get onto this quickly, or boards particularly that don't get onto it, are going to be left behind, and they're going to be at a competitive and a regulatory disadvantage.
For me, I always like to give something tangible and actionable to people. That's why one of the tools that Blackhall and Pearl have created, I think, is so interesting, Tim, around starting with the pack. Because if you think about it, of course, an AI tool has to be put on a pack process that's effective. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's going to just be, as we said earlier, dribble that's being produced across this. But in many organisations, the pack has quietly become this compliance document and not a decision-making tool, which is what directors want to see. And if directors can't quickly see what's changed and what matters and what remains unresolved, the risk is building. So adding AI on top of that, if it's not an effective process and things, accelerates that noise. So what you've done around creating a pack using AI is that one of those beautiful first steps, because you get rid of the noise, you're getting the key signals and getting directors to focus on what's important. And because most boards don't have an AI problem yet, they have a synthesis problem. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of key starting point. Resolve that problem, and you're on your way to using and embracing AI.
Yeah, exactly. The ingredients actually matter, like a lot.
100%. So what gives you some genuine optimism in this space?
Well, directors are having lots of conversations, and that's how it starts. They're asking questions, they're having conversations. The curiosity is going through the roof, and they're putting pressure on management to get access to at least the tools that management actually have. And so, I can imagine a time in 3 years where every board has an AI agent helping them become better.
It's quite a scary thought, but it's going to be the reality. But it's also a shift of that many people underestimate, the speed and the reality of where they're at. So the leading directors that aren't dismissing AI, they're already experimenting with this, and they're doing it cautiously because they understand the stakes. But once that cohort starts changing behavior, as you said earlier, Tim, the rest of the market will start going very quickly. And so you don't want to be madly chasing that and making mistakes. You want to be proactively thinking about that now. And I think
Correct.
there are a lot of people who are starting to do that. Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure talking through some of these things with you. What I've actually liked is you've given examples of the reality of what you're encountering. And between us, we've seen that on both sides of the table. And for me, my biggest takeaway in this is AI is not replacing governance. So, director that was telling me not to use AI, it's going to fundamentally change the standard expected of good governance. And I think a lot of boards are thinking that AI is optional. I don't think that's going to be true for much longer. So really, this is the time to start thinking about this.
100%. AI is going to improve governance, and it's going to lift the minimum standard.
So, Tim, what's the best way for people to reach you if they want to continue the conversation?
Blackhallandboyle.com.
You're sitting on the website taking all the queries. And similarly for me, either through the Vizory website or through LinkedIn. You know, we'd generally love to hear what boards and executives and directors are seeing and practicing, because this space is moving incredibly quickly. And I think we all learn from one another, as I have learnt so much from Tim over the last 6 months that I've got to get to know him as well. So thank you so much, Tim. Let's look forward to the next series.
Thanks, Kirsten. Cheers.